Hi, welcome to the 10-Minute Parent. My name is Don Bolt, and I'll be with you for the next few minutes to talk with you about something that I hope will help you as a parent to raise your children in a way that is in line with, that's consistent with the Bible. And I'd like to talk today a little bit, it's an analogy that I like to use for parents, all right? And it's called the cliff and the fence, all right? And you start off with this question, all right? If you owned a beautiful piece of property that had this dangerous cliff on it, how far from the cliff would you put the fence? Okay, because let's assume for a moment that you had to be concerned about people falling off that cliff. Where would you put the fence? Now here's the problems that you're presented with. If you put the fence too far back from the cliff, you miss the view, right? If you put it too close to the edge, the problem is that if you cross the fence, you face instant destruction. Now you may be sensing where I'm going with this, but we as parents, one of the things that we do, and we do it all the time if we're caring for our children, is that we set limits, don't we, for our children. And so the question becomes, where's the best place to put those limits? People say, well, should I be a strict parent or should I be a lenient parent? And they say, well, I have so many friends that grew up with strict parents, and they didn't turn out well. And I say, well, I'm going to tell you something. Maybe what you interpreted as strictness wasn't strictness as much as it was a coldness. That there was, an uncaring attitude about, what they were doing in terms of setting the rules in the home. I would say that we were pretty strict parents, but on the other hand, we balanced that out by also being, I was the dad that, I'd come home from work and the kids had been plotting all day long, and, I'd come in through the door and they just attack me and we'd just roll around on the floor and laugh and, and they'd try to tear my t-shirt off and it was, but yet we were probably one of the strictest families on the street. In terms of we put that fence, a fair distance back from that cliff, all right? But again, trying to decide, where do I set those limits? Where do I let my children go? Who do I let them go with? What things do they allow to be involved in? What movies can they watch? These kind of things. And I do want to help you to understand something, and that is that as your children age, as they get older, your ability to control them is going to start to wane a bit, right? And what you're going to be left with is a thing called leadership or influence. And so to understand that some of those strict limits are going to be hard to maintain throughout the course of your whole child's life. So what am I saying here? Well, there may be a time in your child's life where you're going to build that fence pretty far back from that cliff and set some pretty strong standards for them. But you're going to have to recognize with time, you may have to relax some of that and give them more freedom. Why? Well, so that they can learn how to make decisions. If in this analogy, if you will, the fence kept them from ever going and looking over the edge of the cliff, you would have a rare child indeed, all right, for one thing. And secondly, just to understand that it might not even be the best thing, all right? To set a standard that just says that, look, my rule is so far from, this place where if you went any further, you'd be harmed. That there's this big gap in between, and I want you to understand as they grow older, more and more of their friends are going to be playing in that gap. More and more of their friends are going to be on the other side of that fence. And so what happens is that, they basically have to rebel against you in order to, just be a part of the lives of people that, frankly, the folks that we approve of. I'm not talking about going off in rebellion with bad people. I'm just talking about, people that are just their friends and like it. And so, understanding that with time we may have to move the fence. We might have to move a little closer to it. But to recognize, too, that we don't want to be the overly lenient parent where it's like, well, I draw the line here, and basically if they cross your rule, on the other side of your rule is sin. Because, there was no restraint. There was no holding them back from that. And so what happens is that at the point where they ever cross one of your rules, they are immediately in trouble with God. Even as adults, I think you recognize that there are limits that you set for yourself that keep you away from temptation. That's the biblical principle here, is not to go into places, not to go into behaviors in life that put us in a place where we're constantly being tempted. All right, that to pull back from that a little bit and live our lives in an area where we could be productive, but aren't always being distracted by those kind of temptations. We pray, lead us not into temptation. Okay, and sometimes with an overly lenient way of approaching this, we can actually be in the place where we are placing our children in a place where we know they're going to be tempted. All right? And so with that, I'm going to say, God bless you. You know, something for you to think about. You know, where do we place those limits for our children? Wanting to place them in places that are constructively, you know, conservative on this side, but also giving them the most room we can to live their lives, you know, and not to get to that place where they're always out by that edge being faced with temptations. God bless you, and we'll see you next time on the 10-Minute Parent.